Guys, how's it going? It's Al. I've got another Zed Run video here for you today, and we're going to take an in-depth look on what's more important. We've spent a lot of time worrying about the odds that our horses get on the racetrack, and we try to race them in the distances that those odds correlate with. If your horse gets like 7 or 8 odds at the shorter distance races and gets higher odds, 10 plus at 2,000 and above, you're probably not going to run your horses in that range. But now at knowyourhorses.com, they have speed data. They have their speed statistics by distance, as well as a great new visualization tool that they've included in their site redesign that really can show you that maybe your horse can outperform what the odds are telling you. And it's very possible that you need to take a look at one versus the other, or use them together, and when to learn to ignore the odds and go for a distance, and when both of them are kind of saying the same thing. So let me bring him in real quick. We're going to talk to Tyler from knowyourhorses.com. Thank you very much for being here. You can give them a follow over on Twitter. Their link will be down below in the description. So Tyler, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. So you want to talk a little bit to our audience here on YouTube about your site, what it does? If they play Zed, they're probably well versed in it, but there's a lot of people who are new to Zed and want to know what your site is and what it does. So why don't you give your site a free plug here?
Right, appreciate that. So thanks again for having me. First off, so Know Your Horses is something I put together when I started playing the game of Zed myself. Back in the old days, you had to kind of put together your own spreadsheets and gather your own data and collect and see, how often your horse finished in first, second, third, whatever. So Know Your Horses kind of is like we intended to be sort of an all-encompassing tool. Like, you can't play the game of Zed without Know Your Horses. Like, in order to figure out, which horses you want to acquire, try to figure out different profiles of them. It kind of gives like we want to be the basketball or football reference of Zed. So what Know Your Horses is, it kind of compiles all your race data, shows you good visuals to see how your horse is performing, things of that nature. It's kind of like supposed to be like the Swiss Army knife of Zed Run. Kind of tell you where you should be running your horses, where you might be most profitable, what distances you might want to avoid. And sort of as the game becomes more challenging in terms of adding things like fatigue and weather preference, gait preference, it's going to be really hard to kind of keep track of all those things on your own. So our intention is to come and help you do that and help you kind of slice the data down, really drill down what your preferences are for your horse, so that way you can make money instead of lose money, because no one likes losing money.
Now, losing money is way less fun than winning money. So here's the site. Very simple. You've taken the redesign down to as simple as possible with all the things you need over here on the side. We're going to focus on the actual horses and the speed times. So the first thing I wanted to look into is going to be under resources, general speed statistics. And this is not for any one horse, right? This table that we're seeing over here.
Right. So that general speed statistic, that's for the entire Zed population, every distance, every entry fee level, like every horse that's ever run. That's what that data represents there. Okay.
So like I said, this is a very mathy page. This is the overall, and I'm going to take a look at one of your horses, one of the best horses. Anybody who's raced in Zed Run knows who Vanilla Bean is. One of the best horses, most dominant horses that there is out there. Yeah, I understand that the left side of the screen is kind of cut off because I zoom in a little bit. I can zoom this back out if that makes it easier. No, it's not, because I'd have to change it in OBS. So whatever. U-shaped horse. Odds right here. I like the redesign here. We spent a little time talking about these, how everything is above the fold. So like they can't see this really on the screen because your picture is in the way there. So I can come over here and they can kind of see that, like, your win percentage, place, show, winnings, profit, ROI, all those things are over here on the top right of the page. So you can see your ROI for the horse. You can see how much profit it's made, 3.6 ETH, all those sorts of things are right there. The mother, the father, odds by distance, and everything else is right there above the fold. Really easy to see, and great screenshot equity if you wanted to share your horse on social media, like all of us do all the time, want to share our horses on social media. But let's look into the speed statistics. Speed analysis is another thing. We're going to get into that in a minute because I think that stuff is awesome. But let's start with the speed statistics and how they, and you can see these numbers are different. I'm going to go back to this other page. This is every horse and this is Vanilla Bean. So what should we be looking at on this page? Because everybody wants to know what's the first thing I can look at.
So the first thing you kind of want to look at, I guess, like the basis point is to see where the mean of your horse is. Does your horse on average run just as fast as the general field or not? That's kind of like where you want to start. Another thing that I tell people to look at is that 25th percentile and the 75th percentile. You want to compare that to the general population. So the general population, they might be running at, whatever the median speed is. If your medians are about the same, you're probably on average an average horse. But if you can see that the 25%, like 25th percentile of the population is running at a certain speed, if your horse's average happens to be that number, your horse is on average running faster, way faster, like 1 standard deviation away from the entire population, or 2 standard deviations, sorry, from the entire population. So you kind of want to use that as a good metric of, okay, maybe I have something here at this specific distance. My horse on average is running way faster than everybody else. And in a game of horse racing, that matters a lot.
So you're saying that you want to look at this, all horses, the entire horse population. You want to look at what the median score is at that distance, let's say 1,000 meters or 1,600 meters, right? So 1,600 is 95.85, and then we can come over to Vanilla Bean and it says her median is 96. I know it's behind your camera right now, but it does say 96.
So she's slower on average, right? That if I repeat those back, so like she's slower than average at 1,600 meter, and that's not good. You don't want that,
right?
But her standard deviation is probably double the general population.
2.45 is what hers is at that particular distance.
If she did not have this is what kind of gives it that U-shaped pattern. If you see something with a high standard deviation, then that horse has the ability, like its maximum speed potential is extremely high. It's also minimum speed potential is also really low. So you shouldn't be surprised if you see Vanilla Bean get smoked by a whole 7 seconds. Like, it's happened before. It's disheartening, but it happens. But she's also beat people by 7-6 seconds before, and that's because of that standard deviation. So like on average, she's going to not run that fast. She'll be pretty average.
But her highs and her lows are vastly separate. So like she's not, and that's what tends to lead to a U-shaped horse at those different distances, correct?
Right. Yeah, and then in the game where you kind of get 60% of the prize pool by coming in first place, it's okay to lose a lot as long as you win just as often, or maybe not as often, but as long as your wins and losses are similar, you're going to be very, very profitable. So that's a desirable trait to have, even though the mean speed is, average or below average in this case.
Yeah, you kind of want, it's the Ricky Bobby approach. You either want to be first or you want to be last. And the reason you want to be last, 9, 10, 11, 12, for those of you who are new to Zed, you kind of class down. That number next to your horse moves down by 1, 2, 3, or 4 points. If you come in first, second, third, or fourth, you pick up 4, 3, 2, 1 points. So it's a way for you to class down or stay down in class and race against theoretically lower powered horses, or at least a larger grouping of lower powered horses. Okay, I moved his camera down to the bottom so you guys can see the entire picture now a little bit better. So apologies. It's set up for football stuff, for NFL videos, for DraftKings and underdog videos whenever I have a guest on. Doesn't quite work for the Zed Run video. So we've moved his camera down to the bottom. So here's how Vanilla Bean looks there. Now, can we take a look at the speed analysis page, which is basically a plot graph, right? The blue is the horse in question. As you can see, it's Vanilla Bean over here. Or you can't see because that's off the page. But basically the blue line is how Vanilla Bean performs at every different distance. And we have a really large sample size, right? How many races has Vanilla Bean run? 1,000?
She's probably up to like 1,800 at this point.
1,600 races we've got. So an actual solid enough sample size here for Vanilla Bean, and hundreds at each different level. And so the shorter distances, you're going to have less opportunity to express an edge because there's just less time on the track. And the longer distances, you may have more time or more chance to express it, which is why you see that standard deviation larger, because if a horse runs really slow at a 2400 race, it's going to take them a lot more time if they run really fast in that race, and there's going to be a wider gap between their fastest and their slowest time, right? So blue is every horse, black is your horse, yes?
Correct. Yeah, the one that looks like kind of like a normal distribution or like looks closer to a perfect bell, that's the general population.
Got it.
The darker line is the horse in question.
Okay, got it. So this is you. This is Gen Pop. So talk to me about these charts, this viz here.
Yeah, so basically it's just kind of showing you like the percentage of your finishes at a particular time. So if we look kind of at, the 1000 meter, that one in the top left, you can see that she's very, very slow in that. Like, that's kind of a chart you don't want to see. We should not be running Vanilla Bean at 1000 meter because on average, she's running slower and a lot slower than the population. So if you look at kind of the area between the curves to the above the lighter curve, but below the darker curve, that's something you don't want to see on the back end.
Right.
But if you switch over to like, say, the 1600 meter, you kind of have that same thing. You kind of have that distribution where she is kind of skewed toward the back, but there is a large enough curve under the dark curve and above the light curve on the left side, which indicates that she's finishing faster often enough where she can win and pull out wins and, generate some more money that way. So those wins, even though they look smaller, can compensate for the losers in the back.
So this is the telling gap right here. Like this gap in between the top, because here's the meat of the bell curve. Here's the middle 50%. Like something keeps wanting to pop up on the thing, but it doesn't quite pop up. And this is where she kind of takes over when the top, whatever percentage of finishes this is over here, she's outperforming by a pretty large gap against them. Same thing here at 2000. She's outperforming the top end, the top 10%. Same thing at 1800. Her fastest times are outperforming the vast majority of those horses. Same with 2200. Same with 2400. Doesn't look like you've raced her a ton at 2600, but that makes a lot of sense because 2600 doesn't populate as many times as the other distances.
Yeah. If you see something really wonky like that, that probably means you've only raced it 5 times or less.
Not a lot of plot points.
Yep.
So this is what a superstar horse looks like on a viz, right? Now, the other thing that you could take from this, a lot of people are very interested in classing down their horses. If they feel like, well, my horse is in class 2 or class 3 hell. Can we use the speed analysis charts like Vanilla Bean at, let's say, 1000? Like, she's going to win some, but like she's going to finish down here at the bottom a lot. So if you're looking to class down, that's where you'd want to throw her into the cheap races at that distance, correct?
Yep, that'd be exactly right. So you kind of use it both ways. I tend not to subscribe to the sandbagging, but people think we were, but that's just kind of like her natural tendencies. It's not something that we can do. But if we were really trying to avoid classing up, period, then 1000 meter would probably be where we put her in.
I mean, that's the thing. You can see that like the meat of her bell curve is slower at like 1200. It's slower at 1600. It's slower at 1400, right? So she's got a lot of times here where she's in the bottom. This is just what a U-shaped horse looks like on a speed score chart once you've got enough data points, essentially, right? So it's not, like you said, it's not something that you guys are aiming to do. I know that some people are looking to do that, right? Like they just can't seem to win it and they want to class down. How can I class down? It's like, well, this is a tool that will help you put your horse in paid races at bad distances for your horse that should result in bad results, but you got to pay to do it,
Right.
My horses aren't good enough to have to do that. So let's take a look at a couple of my horses really quickly. Okay, so I've got 3 that I wanted to look at and get your opinion on. 1, where I should be racing them, and 2, how their odds, because again, the odds on Vanilla Bean, everything is 7, and she wins basically everywhere. This is Eyes Wide Open, one of my better racers. I have 3 racers that I think are pretty good, or 2 that are pretty good, and another one that I think is really, really frustrating. But now that I have this speed analysis, I understand why that horse is extremely frustrating. So we're going to start with Eyes Wide Open, EWO, if you will. Let's take a look at her speed statistics real quick. Standard deviation over 2 at 2,000, 2,400, close to 2 overall at 1,800. And if we take a look at her speed statistics, her speed analysis, and you look at the charts, not great at 1,200, pretty average at 1,000, got some okay finishes at 1,400, has been fast, but pretty much average here. But then we kind of look up here at 1,800 and 2,000, where, yeah, her median, her average finish is right there with the bell curve, but she gets out way ahead a lot in those 1,800 races. And if I was to show her odds, they're better at the shorter distances. Way better at the shorter distances. Sub 9 here, 1,800 goes to 9.5, 2,000, 10 and above at 2,000, 2,200 and 2,400. But if I was to sort, so we go here to drill down, we go here to length, hit 1,800, and all of a sudden 15 wins out of all these races at 9.5.
It's a beautiful looking chart,
right? I'm pretty much gonna just keep racing her at 1,800, regardless of what division she's in, as opposed to chasing the lower odds at the shorter races. Based on the speed analysis, I should just race her at this distance, right?
Yeah, that's what it definitely seems to be indicating. Like, forget which one it looked like. It like the one, I think one of the shorter distances, like if you were looking at class down, there are some distances that definitely seem
1,200.
Like, yeah, that 1,200 is like a perfect for classing down.
And
but based on
2,000, she kind of looks like she outperforms at the high end and outperforms at the low end, and she's kind of below the median. So like if I wanted to stay U-shaped, it looks like 1,800 and 2,000 are the distances to race her at.
Yeah, right. And that 1,800 meter, it looks like you'd have a hard time maybe declassing there, just because you probably won't finish in that bottom 3 as much. It might be like a middle of the pack to top of the pack runner, but in my opinion, most people should be striving to class up and see how good your horse really is compared to other competition. But based on what you're seeing, you kind of want to maximize like that area above the general population on the left and below your horse's curve. So like that's kind of like the rule of thumb for looking at these. I know the speed statistics table's really hard to grok. There's a lot of numbers, row-based, table with a bunch of numbers in it. These visuals hopefully will give you a quick glance of, where you should be. Granted, you will need a larger sample size for these. Like I wouldn't take too much from it after 10 races, but you should use it after 10 races to kind of get an idea of where you should maybe invest your money. Because again, we kind of did this because odds are starting to go away, right? So like that's a thing that Zed's indicated. And people are going to be spending money to discover their horses and their preferences and such. So here
I think that's super important, is that like we've basically just leaned on odds for I'm generally new to the game. I've been playing for the 2 or 3 years that it's been in existence. I basically came in April. So as long as we've as long as I've been playing and racing and trying to identify my horses, it's been through odds analysis, distance analysis, maybe utilizing the dollar amount, like the $2.50 races versus 5 versus 10, to see, is this horse capable of moving up even within their own class to the mid to high stakes in their own class, or is it just a horse that's a 250 killer, and do I have to keep him there to stay profitable with that horse? Now we actually have this speed analysis tool that's going to help with that. And with odds going away, and again, it's Zed, so like they could go away in like 2 days, or it could be 2 years that odds just disappear. But when that happens, you guys have a leg up on basically all the other competition with this tool, yes?
Right, yeah, I definitely think so. Because like the only other thing that you could potentially use is just running your horses blindly at every distance, and then go into kind of what we have is the drill down mode, and just see at each distance, do I have that U shape? Do I finish, how's my win place show growing or shrinking over various distances? But I think it's kind of hard to judge early on, because another cool thing that's going to come out of this too is once we start adding more we're going to add more filters to those curves. So you can kind of that general population curve, we can limit that down to what does a class 1 runner look like.
That would be really cool.
And hopefully even if you're still in class 4 or class 5 and you say have like 25 races under your belt at a specific distance, you'll be able to see kind of, okay, so a class 1 horse will probably have a normal bell curve shape, but it'll be skewed a little bit toward the left side of that graph, meaning it's running faster. So ideally, we'd be able to tell you not only, okay, your horse can run well at this distance, but where do we think the optimal class might be? Do we think your horse can compete at the class 1 level? Do we think that you kind of have to keep between 4 and 5? Could you potentially get stuck in class 3? Because, we talked about, people who like to sandbag. So maybe if your horse is getting up to class 3, but it's just not fast enough to win there, that might be an indication of when you should take some strategies to, fatten your wallets a little bit.
Yeah.
We indicate we don't like sandbagging, but that is a viable strategy for people who want to profit. I know LBJ Goat is a horse who kind of does that same thing. He's made like, I don't know, 6 Ethereum profit in like just a month or 2.
It's a good horse.
Right. But they utilize that approach where they run at the, not as good distances for a lower amount, but their preferred distances for a higher amount. And they end up, the numbers show that it's been very profitable.
I mean, that's smart. I'm not talking about ranking. I'm not talking about declassing. I'm talking about when it's very art of war, right? When your opponent is strong, retreat. When your opponent is weak, attack. So like if your horse is really strong at a specific distance, and I've been aggressive like that with EWO, especially more recently since breeding's opened up. EWO, when the track was a lot tougher, right? When there was no breeding and it was basically steel on steel at every distance. I basically kept eyes wide open to just $2.50 races because it's all she could pull odds in and all she could win. If I put her up higher, she'd lose. And I'd just be losing money if I did that. But now that there's more horses on the track, and when odds go away and you actually have to race your horses 50 times to know what they are instead of 4 Griffin race plus the first 3 races at 3 different distances to have an idea of what you've got. These horses that are pulling 20 odds that leave the track in 4 races and never get seen or heard from again are going to be on the track for 10, 15, 20, 25 races before you get an accurate picture of what you think you have, which means that the actually good horses are going to have an even bigger edge and for a longer time. So looking at EWO and how she kind of runs separately from where her odds go, there's one more horse that I wanted to talk about before we kind of get out of here, and that's Dashing Dart. Class 5 horse that I have that can't seem to get out of class 5 because he never wins. Likes to be on the podium. He gets on the podium 37% of the time, but never wins. Pulls really good odds. And I've been extremely aggressive with this horse in class 5. As you can see by the entry fee column, I'm not just racing this horse in $2.50 races. I'm being somewhat aggressive with the entry fees here because he has been profitable, right? And so I'm willing to risk higher entry fees because at least he's not running negative and costing me money, but he's not winning the big money. And so the first thing I did is the analysis tools weren't up. So I started looking at his speed statistics, over 3 at 2,400, 2.6 at 2,200, really solid at 16 with a 187 as well. He does not murder the competition. Sorry. Old school hip hop fan. Can't help myself. But if you look at the speed analysis charts, he freaking sucks. Why do you suck? Look at this. He's slow as hell at 1,000. He's slow as hell at 12. He's average as hell at 14. He's had some good finishes at 16, as that standard deviation kind of shows us, right?
Right.
And then what was it, 22 and 24? He's just kind of all over the place. So here's my question for you. If you owned this horse, because a lot of people I'm sure have a sub 10 odds horse that just doesn't quite win. I see him in Discord, in Zed Discord all the time, right? Where would you race this horse? What would you do with this horse? And sometimes it's like a 20 odds horse. What would I do with it? I'd just sell it and start over. But like, this is a sub 10 odds horse. So what would you do with this horse?
So for me, I would make sure that the sample sizes are enough to tell that the horse, like that's the speed statistics, like we were saying, you kind of need a decent number of races. And if you want to stick through it, I would look at the race, the different lengths in which they seem to be promising. So like that 1,600 meter race.
He's still kind of a baby. He's only got like 50 races.
Right. So you kind of have like that 2000 meter, like if you are willing to, and it doesn't like, the odds are good. So
Mm-hmm.
I would get all of these counts up to probably 20 a piece
Mm-hmm.
because they're not bad. You're not wasting money.
Mm-hmm.
When odds go away, you actually won't necessarily know that. And you'll kind of learn a lot about the horse itself. But as you kind of start getting more races under the belt, more finish times, what I would start to do is just really start to maybe double down on the ones that seem a little bit more promising than others. Like this 1000 meter, I would not enter as often, but
Never.
the 1600 meter, it seems to have enough oomph at the left tail of that curve
Mm-hmm.
where
At
you
the
might be
high
able to
end.
pull out some wins. You might get second and third places. Like that might be where you're finishing second and third. It is also very possible that this horse just isn't a winner.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know there's a horse from Crimson Racing. You might know the Crimson Chin. He's a 1000 meter killer. That stable has another horse named Terms of Engagement, who's not necessarily a winner, but I would like if you could pull up
I'm getting there.
the speed analysis chart for this. It's like the most beautiful looking speed analysis chart you can ask for. Look
Mm-hmm.
at the 2000 meter, 2200 meter, 2400 meter. It's like a normally distributed curve, but just faster than everyone else.
Yeah, at all
Like,
these different distances, at 2200, 2400, 2600 doesn't populate all that much, so I can't really rely on 2600 because it's all you're just never gonna have a ton of 2600 races. But like 2000, look how much faster this horse is than the average. The high end at 1800, the median versus the median here. Look at the two different humps, and then all of his finishes are up here, or her finish. I don't know if it's a male or a female. Are all here above. Like it's going to finish top 6 in most races and has that really high speed finishes as well everywhere except for like 1400.
right. And if you look at the odds aren't that impressive. They're in I think the 12s
Yeah.
area. So like it's not like a horse where you think just by looking at the plain odds, like you don't think it would be a killer necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
But it's finishing first, second, third, fourth. Like when these tournaments start coming out, this is a very good tournament horse.
Mm-hmm.
Like Vanilla Bean will never win a tournament. We're running that digital derby in next month. I don't expect her to win. We want to be in it just because it's like the first tournament of Zed. But like if I had a horse like Terms of Engagement, I'd be entering this horse into every tournament because the chances of it finishing bottom half of the field is very slim. It's
Very
going to
low.
finish top 3, top 4. And if that's where your points are accumulating, you're going to keep moving up on the class. So like if Crimson keeps racing this horse over and over again, it'll probably have some of the highest class ratings you'll see in Zed. And that's an impressive stat.
Because he's never going to lose points. He's never going to come in 9, 10, 11, or 12. So he's always going to pick up points. But it doesn't even matter because class 1 is basically 80 plus. So you could have 81 or you could have 8,000 and you're going to be racing
Right.
against all the same horses. Once you're in class 1, you're there.
Right. But if you stumble across a horse and you notice that kind of those charts for the speed analysis, like that's a diamond in a rough. If someone's selling it for below market value or at or slightly above market value, those would be the horses I'd be jumping on. So like I would honestly use this tool a lot to shop and kind of see if you can find some diamond in the roughs, like some of these low teens odds horse, like somewhere between like 11 and 14. If you can find a horse that has that kind of curve, it may not be the type of horse that comes in first a lot, which a lot of people are looking for, but you can find yourself an extremely solid horse that shows almost 50% of the time, despite the odds not being super sexy.
Exactly.
So like,
and over time, this horse has made over 2.5 Ethereum profit. Right? No, sorry. It's made 1 Ethereum profit, 3.5 in winnings, 2.6 in entry fees. So like you can grind out a profit with a horse like this, even though it's not going to get you that super high end because you're not going to finish in first as much. Being on the podium, hey, winning some money, never go broke making a profit.
Yep.
So I think that this speed analysis chart is right now, I think it's game changing because as we've shown on this video, you can find horses that don't have the odds in their favor that have the ability to be profitable and make you an awful lot of money in the short and the long term. And when odds go away, this right now is the only way to identify how good your horses actually are. So thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you for developing this tool. I can't wait to dive deeper into it, both in my own stable and horses that I might want to try and acquire down the road, definitely go give Know Your Horses a follow on Twitter. Go check out their site. There'll be links for both down below in the description. And I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.
He's a legend.